they've worked way too hard for that. So I just decided that those girls need to go in and do the rest of the competition.
And happy Saturday. It is Saturday, July 31st, 2021, and this is The Deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. Thanks for joining us today. We took some time off last weekend because we were over with the folks at Duke Health and the African American COVID Task Force over in Durham. And we'll bring you some stuff from that event later on in the show. And then, of course, I'm getting old and I have sciatica. In the last 3 weeks or so, I've been down in my back, as my grandma would say, and haven't hardly been able to move. And today I'm finally at a point where I can actually sit in a chair long enough to do the program. And but I have somebody with me who is he plays a doctor on TV. I think his name is Val Atkinson. Val, welcome back to The Deal.
Thank you, Ed. And I don't be a doctor on TV. I go and see one quite often because I'm old too.
Well, Val, I can tell you, sciatica is no joke. I mean, the pain radiated all the way down to my feet, and I thought I was going to need to get a new leg. It was hurting that bad, so I'm glad that ordeal is over. So how are you doing, Val?
I am doing great. I just had my quarterly checkup, and all of the numbers say I'm good. Uh, I, like you, have back problems from time to time, but other than that, I am doing great. Glad to say it. Glad to be here to say it.
Well, that's good. So Val, leading into the program, showed a little clip of a young lady named Simone Biles. She's over in Tokyo at the Olympics. A lot of the Olympic lead up was around her. I mean, all the networks, even the ones not carrying the Olympics, were doing stories about Simone Biles because she's just a fantastic athlete. But when she got to Tokyo, she started to experience some anxiety, and she talked about her mental health. And one thing that I do know about Simone Biles is she was molested by the same doctor who molested a lot of gymnasts that were part of USA Gymnastics. And then she talked about how some of the coaches have been abusive over the years. And USA Gymnastics has made a lot of money off of this young lady. So when she decided to pull out of the events, she got some backlash from folks. She got a lot of support too, but she got some backlash. Val, you were an athlete, and I was an athlete, and I think we talked about this about the Olympics and the Olympic movement before. That some of it is good, some of it is not so good. The reality is, and you've been a youth coach, I've been a youth coach. Not all youth coaches treat those kids well. Can you talk a little bit about Simone Biles, just real quick, about your feelings about her pulling out, and it's probably being the right thing for her to do?
Absolutely the right thing to do, Ed. And what viewers and just all people need to realize is that just because you become a special athlete, be, because you become prominent in anything, we're just talking about athletics right now, but it does not remove you from the day-to-day uh, impact of being human. And mental health is a big part of being human. And if she needs that, she's the best judge of what her mental health is like. If she feels she needs that, by all means, should have taken advantage of that. Uh, I hope she does well and listens to the right people, because that's where we are right now. Sometimes your reaction is based on uh, the input that you get and where that input is coming from. So I hope she's being uh, uh, talked to by the right people, and I hope she takes it properly. And I wish you all the well, all the best in the future.
Yeah, definitely. One last thing about the Olympics. Early this morning, our time, but it's already evening over in Japan. Jamaica swept the women's 100 meters, which I had predicted. It was a incredible race. Elaine Thompson came back and beat Shelly Ann Fraser Price, and Sharika Jackson took third for Jamaica. And the only reason why I bring it up is because there was an American that was supposed to be in the mix, Carrie Richardson, but she didn't even go because she had a positive marijuana test. We talked a little bit about it, a month ago when it happened, Val. I even said then the possibility of the Americans not winning any medals in the 100 meters for women was already not, something out of the realm of possibility. The Jamaicans are extremely strong. Still with the women sprinters, we'll see later on with the men. Jamaica isn't so strong anymore. There's no guy named Usain Bolt for Jamaica anymore. So anyway, that's my sports stuff for this morning. I want to get that out of the way because I've been thinking about Simone Biles because I feel like she has every right not to participate, and she needs to look after her mental health. She was abused by the system, and I will admonish parents, Val. You got little girls or little boys in some of these sports. You got to know who these coaches are and doctors are and people that take your kids off. And I think a lot of it is that is finally she's finally coming to terms with some of what happened to her, and people aren't acknowledging that. So be mindful of who's with your children. This is going to be a big swing and shift of gears, Val. The 1-6 committee, the select committee in the House that Nancy Pelosi put together. Uh, Tell me about what the 1-6 committee is going to be able to do. Is it getting the kind of attention that you think it deserves? And how is it going to go with the 1-6 committee?
I think it is getting the type of attention that it deserves. I want to give kudos out to whoever planned, and I guess it's Chairman Thompson, Benny Thompson from Mississippi, whoever planned to have those officers on first. I think that's critically important to set the stage, that to say that these are the people that were there. They were injured. Hear their story. It's not hearsay. It's not secondhand news. They were actually there and they experienced this. It was not a regular tour. It was a riot. It was an insurrection. And I thought it was great that they had all of these people on. I was particularly impressed with, I believe his name was Dent, I'm not sure, tall African-American gentleman, who talked about people telling him, other African-American officers telling him how they were treated. But more importantly, he told the committee how he was treated. And he was called the N-word and really treated very disrespectfully. And said the first time that it ever happened to him as a law enforcement official. And I thought that was critically important because what it showed is that these people that attacked the Capitol building on January 6th, they were lawless. They did not respect the law. They did not respect people that were there to enforce the law. And these are the same people that are always crying and yelling about law and order and lock them up and throw away the key and so forth. Under it all, Ed, there lies a big layer of racism. And we're going to get to it little by little, but it's going to come out and show that that's one of the big issues that prompted this whole 1-6 insurrection.
Sure. Yeah, I want to remind the folks you're watching The Deal. That's Val Atkinson. You just heard. I'm Ed Clark. We're here talking about the 1-6 committee, select committee, trying to get at what happened on that date. I think I have some tape of that, Officer Val. Let me play that, and then we'll come back and we'll continue the discussion.
Given us marching orders and to keep your guns hidden. It urged people to bring your trauma kits and gas mask, to link up early in the day in 6 to 12-man teams. It indicated there would be time to arm up. Seeing that message caused me concern. To be sure, looking back now, it seemed to foreshadow what happened later. At the time, though, we had not received any threat warnings from our chain of command. I had no independent reason to believe that violence was headed our way.
Val, yeah. So back to your point that the officers testify. One of the things that was really disturbing to me afterwards, though, is that you had Republicans go on Fox News and some of the Fox News commentators, the usual suspects, Tucker Carlson, people like that, trying to say that those officers were lying or exaggerating or whatever. Um, I know that, and I think we're pretty clear that there's 30% of the people are just awful human beings, like Tucker Carlson and those people at Fox. And there's going to be people who believe that. But I want to get back to your point about how this is linked to racism to begin with. There were people in the Congress with Confederate flags. There were people calling people nigger. I don't want to say the N word. They were calling people niggers. They were doing everything they could to make it clear that they were either fascists, Nazis. All kind of symbolism was there. Um, and we've had experts like the doctor from University of Michigan and Michigan State we have on from time to time to talk about those hate groups or whatever. Um, Val, Benny Thompson, and I've worked with Benny Thompson in the past on some stuff, is very astute and he knows how to craft a story and he's going to have the right people come up there and testify. What can we do though if these people still have a hold on state legislatures, like in Texas, like in Mississippi, like in all these other places where they are depending on these hardest of the hardcore right, like I said, neo fascists to hold that whatever you want to call the Republican Party together. Uh, they're not going to get rid of those people because those people vote in primaries. Isn't it still about them needing to hold on to their primary vote and the Republicans never calling these people to task for what they did?
Absolutely, that's what it's about, Ed. And the only remedy, to go back to your original question here, the only remedy that I see that can make this go away, these problems we got with the state legislatures running everything, is we have to rewrite or substitute what the Supreme Court took out of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, Section 4. The Supreme Court said that the Congress needed to rewrite Section 4. And if we can ever do that, then this 1965 Voting Rights Act has power. It has teeth again. And in rewriting Section 4, they'll be able to put in things like excessive gerrymandering, having things like independent commissions to do the redistricting and those kinds of things, and make sure that there is pre-clearance, that they can't do all of these crazy things that they have done in the past. We can go through and make those kinds of things happen so that it won't matter anymore about them having the majority in some of these legislatures right now. If we get Section 4 put back in the Voting Rights Act, we can go back and do the right things to make the legislatures in all of the states be responsive to the people that they serve. I think that's the answer.
That is the answer. Just sort of a knock-on discussion to that is the talk that has been going on about whether or not there was going to be any legislation on voting rules and voting laws on the federal level. And we know that's tied to your favorite subject, the filibuster. That there does not seem to be the will to do anything on voting at the federal level. And one Joe Manchin for is not going to come along with you on this. It doesn't appear. And then again, you have these other Democratic senators that are a little bit leery because they got to win elections, and we still got to need to come up with 4 or 5 more seats on the Senate side to have enough of a real majority not to have to worry about the one Joe Manchin. What are the prospects for voting legislation on the federal level? I know the folks in Texas, a lot of them are still hanging out in D.C. because that's the only way they can protect voting rights in Texas. What are the options on the federal level? Is there going to be anything at all?
It's going to be very difficult between now and January the 3rd of 2023, because that's when the 118th Congress takes its seat. The Congress will be voted on November of next year, 2022. But until that time, it's going to be difficult as long as Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema and people who think like them decide that they would rather have an attempt at bipartisanship than they would be prepared to get rid of the filibuster. And that's going to be very difficult. It's going to be very difficult to get 10 senators, Republican senators, to go along with the Democratic program. So my job that I would give to the people there in Washington now would be to say, you have to tread water between now and the time that the 117th Congress is over, because you can't do anything more than Joe Manchin wants you to do. That's hard to say, but that is a fact. Joe Manchin is disallowing them to change the rules. And until they change his mind, it's not a lot they can do.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. We got a few minutes left in this segment, though, and one other thing that is this is why this is also weird is the infrastructure negotiations that have been going on. I heard this guy, your other favorite senator, Mitch McConnell, start say the other day that hey, well, compromise is good, and there's some stuff that we can do on infrastructure, and $3 trillion is not necessarily out of the realm of possibility. Um, what do you make of some of these Republican senators now that are saying that okay, maybe we can do some stuff on infrastructure, that there is a way for it? Is that because they're afraid because people have got money in their pockets? It's very clear now that anti-vaccination on the Republican part has led to a lot of dead people. The economy is way better than they let on. Are they afraid, and now they got to jump on the infrastructure bus, or what's the deal with that?
I may be cynical in my approach or my feeling about this, Ed, but I see a strategy to make the Democrats look like the bad guy. Follow me on this possibility scenario. If they go ahead and pass the infrastructure bill that they're talking about, and Nancy Pelosi holds up to her idea by saying, we will not bless that until we see the one come across about the human infrastructure bill, okay? If she does that, then the Republicans can say, well, we passed your $3 trillion bill. But the Democrats over in the House is blocking that. The Democrats in the House won't approve that so we can fix our roads and airports and subways and all of those kinds of bridges and all those kinds of things. And they're going to lay it right at Nancy Pelosi's feet, which is really not true, but it's going to be difficult to deny that because she's going to have to say no until they pass this other piece about the human infrastructure. And they're not going to do that. Mitch McConnell won't do that. They've done all that they're going to do. I think it's a very slick strategy he's got. But I have always said that the typical average Republican lawmaker is a smidgen, just a little bit smarter than the average Democrat. I'm telling you, that's the only way I can figure it out. They seem to always be a step or two ahead.
Yeah. Well, Val, I think that's a good place for us to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about the still need for police reform. I know Scott, Senator Scott and Senator Booker and Congresswoman Bass are working out a police reform bill. I want to talk about Donald Trump and his new troubles. Uh, and then we want to end up the next segment on talking about the vaccinations and where we are. And then in the last segment today, we're going to have some of the footage from the event with Duke Health last weekend. Dr. DeLon Canterbury, Dr. Alexandra Rice, and a whole bunch of other people from Duke are going to be in the last segment to talk about what they're doing to try to get people vaccinated. So you guys stay right there. We'll be right back after this message.
Hypertension, diabetes, and heart disease.
Black patients are twice as likely to die of COVID-19
because of underlying conditions.
and the most affected are Black women.
Black women. Black women. Black women.
Now there are vaccines.
But 41% of us say they want to wait and see. Our health and those we love can't wait. We need to protect ourselves and our families now.
Now, get more information.
Because our health is worth a shot.
Go to cdc.gov.
And welcome back to our second segment of the deal. Is Saturday, July 31st. Time is flying. Dude, I remember when it was Christmas. And now we're almost time for Christmas again. I mean, the summer is fast approaching the end. And Val, when we ended up, we were talking about the possibility of a infrastructure bill getting out of the Senate and getting passed, and how Mitch McConnell is in the back room trying to come up with a plan to make this look bad for the Democrats, because quite frankly, the Republicans don't have a lot to stand on. They're still standing on Donald Trump won the election, and wearing a mask is bad for you. And I think those 2 points don't earn them any points, Val. But let's talk about one other piece of legislation that I think is absolutely important. You know, obviously voting rights is important, infrastructure is important, but this police reform bill, like the George Floyd Reform Act and a number of other things, are stuck and not going anywhere. But Senator Tim Scott, who's the lone African-American senator on the Republican side, and Senator Cory Booker and Congresswoman Bass from California have been saying that they've been working on something. What is that deal about? And do you think it's something? Joe Manchin figures in this too, because every time I hear any of them talk, they always talk about how they have to use some of the ideas that Joe Manchin has. Last I looked, Joe Manchin is not a Black man that has to worry about being stopped, but maybe I'm missing something.
I'll tell you, Joe Manchin is just flexing his muscles. I wrote a piece last week about whether or not when Chuck Schumer looks in the mirror, whether or not he sees himself or Joe Manchin. I don't know. He's got a feeling over his back. He's almost got a check with Joe Manchin on everything. So this is not good. But I understand that. But right now, I am anxious, very much so, to see what Scott and Booker and Bass comes up with. Simply because Scott has gone on record as saying that the whole business about qualified immunity is a non-starter. That's not going to happen, according to Scott. And that is the biggest piece that we're negotiating about. So I am anxious to see how Booker and Bass are going to compromise their way out of that. Their job, after they agree with Scott, their job is to come back to us, the people, and convince us that they have a substitute plan that's just as good as, or might work as well as, the qualified immunity thing that we all said we wanted and needed. So that's why I'm watching this very closely to see, because that has been a pattern with Democrats. They get into these discussions and bipartisan talks and compromises with Republicans, and they cave. They cave every time. And then they try to get back with the citizens who put them in office to try to explain to them why they really didn't cave and why the deal is not that bad, and maybe next time we'll get more. So I'm interested to see what happens here. Scott knows that he can't come back with any deal that Mitch McConnell doesn't want. And
Yeah.
he's going to be steadfast. He's not going to cave.
Yeah. Well, our legal expert, Irv Joyner, who's on with us from time to time from the NCCU Law School, he pointed out in an episode recently, I don't remember if it was on Connections or this program, that police really don't have any constitutional authority for anything. All is kind of derived from what localities, give them in the form of funding and all that, and then consequently what they give them in the form of police powers. And then when you look at some of the Supreme Court rulings, they recently determined they just can't run in your house and follow you, in your house if it's not an emergency, and those kind of things we talked about. Um, is it that we don't have a really good understanding of what we want our police to do in the first place? I often think about it because I see sometimes these local police authorities and they'll show an incident and they have all these guys with flak jackets on and camo and tanks and all that. And it's created something completely different. So police and what we have now are two different concepts altogether. These other folks are more like paramilitary. Is that part of the problem here, Val, is that we've confused what we want our police to do?
Well, there's no confusion. The average white, right-wing, Republican, conservative male knows exactly what they want the police to do. They want police to control and contain people of color in their communities, to keep law and order, to keep the rankers down. And they want it done, like I said, in their community. If you have to stop them on the highway, if you have to pick them up at the mini mart or wherever, they want it stopped and they want it controlled. So that's clear to me what they want. What we want, people of color, we want justice. We want to be treated fairly. And we don't want to be treated as though we are criminal until we can prove otherwise. We don't, it's just the other way around. So the law enforcement community, especially those in control, the informal group leaders, I like to call them, they are trying to satisfy that first group I told you about, the conservative right-wing GOP guy who want them to go out in the community of color and beat heads and scare them to death and that sort of thing. Law enforcement is caught between trying to do what they want done and also at the same time follow the law, because most of the things that this former group wants done is not following the law. It's illegal. And so it's a difficult job. I feel sorry for my brown and black brethren who are wearing the blue. They have a tough job because they know what's going on, but many of them have mortgages and car notes and 2 or 3 kids. They can't walk away from their job tomorrow because it's a racist setup. And they can't turn in their coworkers either. I'll say this and I'll make it the last piece on this, but I remember the movie American Gangster with Denzel Washington and Russell Crowe. And Russell Crowe's partner was trying to tell him why they should keep that $1 million that they found in the trunk. And his partner told him, you have to understand that cops see other cops that turn in money as people that will turn in cops who take money. And further than that, cops kill cops they can't trust. And if that's the kind of mentality that's going on within law enforcement agencies, now we see why black and brown people that wear the blue can't afford to turn their people in, their buddies in. They know who are beating up the heads and doing wrong things and shooting people in the back for running away and planting weapons and all of that. They know who they are, but they can't afford to turn them in because they know what happens when you are listed as a person who are not protecting the blue.
Yeah, exactly. Those are all good points. I want to remind you, you're watching The Deal. That's Val Atkinson. I'm Ed Clark. We've been talking about a lot of stuff already this morning. Simone Biles, the 1-6 committee, infrastructure, voting reform, police reform. And now we want to turn to something that I want to not talk about ever again if I can help it, but it won't go away. It's an orange menace that won't go away is one Donald John Trump. And this week, Val, two revelations about Trump I want you to tell me about. One is this material that was released that indicated that he was trying to convince the Justice Department to help him steal the election, and two, a ruling that says that the Treasury Department has to turn over his tax returns. So let's start first. What were the shenanigans in the days after the election that Donald Trump was up to? What did he want the Justice Department to do on his behalf?
Well, at this particular time, Jeffrey Rosen was the acting AG, and Richard Donahue was his deputy. And there was a conversation that was recorded. And during this conversation, Mr. Donahue was taking copious notes. And basically, what Trump asked Jeffries to do, Rosen to do, was to declare that the election was corrupt. And Rosen basically told us, well, we can't do that without justification and without evidence that it is. And Trump basically said, well, I don't want you to investigate. All I want you to do is to just say it was. And then me and my Republican buddies in the Congress, we'll take it from there. All you have to do is just say it was corrupt. And what Trump was doing, planning to use Rosen's statement as he did with Comey during the Benghazi piece against Hillary in 2016. It's the same thing. It's the same playbook. He had them to come back and say, well, we are reopening the Benghazi case against Hillary Clinton. And boy, the polls went haywire. Donald Trump picks up 4 or 5 points right there. And he thinks the same thing can happen here after the fact. Is the Justice Department can say that we believe that the election was corrupt. And then he gets on TV and says, well, the Justice Department already says it's corrupt. I'm going to get the Congress to go ahead and prove that it is investigated. Yeah. And in the meantime, I'll just stay president until we get to the bottom of this.
Well, it's obvious he never read the Constitution.
Yeah.
So clearly, Val, you're telling me that Donald Trump is a corrupt politician, which we already knew, right? We just more affirmation that he was a corrupt politician, and the reason why he was in office wasn't necessarily to help the American people, but to help himself. Because the second part of the bad news for him this week is his tax returns can be released by Treasury and sent to Congress because there is an investigation, which is what the rules say, that you can look at those tax returns. There's a germane investigation that's going on related to it. And then another one of his cohorts is been charged federally and had the highest bond ever, $250 million. One of the people who worked on his inauguration committee and also was a big fundraiser for him. But let's concentrate on Donald Trump's tax returns. I suspect, Val, that once people see his tax returns, we're going to know that he's been lying all the time about his wealth. One, now, it's been clear that none of the buildings that he says he owns. And if he does own them, they don't have the value they purport to have. He doesn't have cash. He has cash flow issues. He has a tremendous amount of debt, and he's lied about all of this on his tax returns. Do you think this may be finally, towards the beginning of the end? I've been saying it for a long time that, okay, this is going to be it, but he always finds a way out. Can these tax returns help finally put him in the dustbin of history?
It can, and in my assessment, it probably will, but I would caution everyone to understand that it won't be anytime soon. Donald Trump is going to challenge this. He's going to take it to court, and it may take a year to get to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court may have it for a year. So we're talking about a long time before a final ruling is made that yes, you can release these tax returns that you have and make them public and all the other things that everybody wants. It's not that the Congress is going to get his tax returns tomorrow. It's going to be quite some time, but he's itching and scratching all over. He knows the end is close. The end is near, because Donald Trump is a very narcissistic guy. He's about the business of image management. He is concerned about how people perceive him. And it's going to hurt him to his little dear heart to let people know that he ain't as wealthy as he had purported to be. So that's the one thing. The other thing, they want to get him on tax evasion. And they don't want him just to pay some fine or whatever. He could be satisfying you, Ed, your desire that you see him in this orange jumpsuit. We know that's what you want, but
yes,
that may happen.
That's why I have an orange in the background here.
Right. That's right. You just may see that. I mean, and it may be minimal. I mean, if he only serves a year, it would be a monumental development. I think all of those anti-Trumpers out there will feel that they have been exonerated themselves. Everything is fine now. Everything is decent because he served a year's term or whatever.
Well,
I don't think he'll see his taxes anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't think so either, but I can't wait because I want to see the embarrassment on the faces of the folks who've been so supportive of him when they realize that they've been duped this whole time. I think they already know. I think something else is driving them.
Give me an example before we go on that, Ed. I'm not so sure that, because the analogy I look at is the Confederates. They started in December of 1860 when South Carolina seceded, okay? And if you mentioned earlier on the show, in some of the footage, the videos in the Capitol building, there was a guy walking around with a Confederate flag. This is 2021. So, I have no faith that those Trump supporters are going to say, oh, I see what was going on. Oh, I better go the other. These guys will be Trump supporters 100 years from now. There is no way in changing their mind. And that's the problem I have with our current president and some of the advisors and strategists that he has. That is the biggest problem why they can't do anything with Joe Manchin and his crowd. That's the biggest problem they got with Tim Scott and this whole thing about police reform. They really, really believe there's a bunch of people out there, if they get the right information, they'll reconsider their support of Donald Trump and what's going on over there, and they'll come back to where they were before 2015 when Trump decided he was going to run for president.
Well, that's crazy, because that ain't happening. You're right. Those people's minds won't be changed. You know what, Val? It's a good place to take a break. When we come back, you're going to come to me, and I'm going to be over at Duke, at Wheels Skate Park in Durham with the folks from Duke Health in the African American COVID Task Force. And then when Val and I come back after that, we're going to wrap up and talk about the federal vaccination policy and what some of the Republican governors are saying about folks who need to get vaccinated. So we're going to take a small break. Stick around. You'll see Dr. DeLon Canterbury, Dr. Alexandra Rice from Duke, and a whole bunch of other people. And then Val and I'll be back, close out the show. We'll be back after this message.
they're doing the 6 months afterward because a lot of people really have not came to terms with believing in that the vaccine does work. And so, you know, we're continuing to try to inform the public.
So I just encourage you to speak to your family doctor, speak to your internal medicine doctor, whoever you really trust for healthcare information. And I know with social media, it's like anybody can get online and say anything. Some people with good intents, but not necessarily the right information. So it's important to make sure you're getting your information from the right sources. There's a lot of misleading things. Some people don't have our community's best interests at heart. So it's really important to feel comfortable with speaking to your doctor, and I hope to be one of those trusted voices.
Hey, we are here at Wheels Fun Park getting people vaccinated. Today is a Jobs and Shots event. So from 10 to 2 here in Durham at Wheels Fun Park, we're getting people vaccinated. We're also providing resources. We're providing free giveaways. Plenty of partnerships are here today. We have dozens of people from Duke, nonprofits like La Familia, Latin 19, African American COVID Task Force, so many more. We have Duke Public Health, we have nursing, and we're just trying to get people educated. We have people not only getting tested, but are getting COVID rapid tests. They're also getting tools and resources for community funding or help with rental assistance as well. So plenty going on. This is more of a job fair, so if you're looking for a job, you can get your shot while you wait.
Well, I'm among the unemployment population, and I'm seeking employment. My job has not called me back, so I worked at Durham Convention Center.
We are here because we want everybody to get vaccinated. We have a new Delta variant that is really spreading very fast across the country, spreading in North Carolina, and we want to make sure that everybody now gets their vaccine. We have to protect our children younger than 12 that don't have access to vaccines yet, and we want to protect ourselves and our families.
Yeah, because I have a granddaughter who's a year old and she has Down syndrome and she's had heart surgery, and I wanted to protect her. I wanted to protect her and myself. So, and my godmother, she had been on me to get my shot, and I finally decided it was time, and you know, to stop putting it off and come and get it done. And I'm glad I did. It's not bad. I got the Johnson & Johnson one shot, and it was easy. It was easy. It was nothing to it.
I think what we've seen is people who were hesitant, realizing that with the Delta variant and the uptick that's happened because enough people haven't got vaccinated, I think people are really saying, you know what, it's time. And the vaccine has been out there. All of the vaccines have been there out long enough, I think, for people to understand that they're safe. So I'm so excited that we have a lot of people here this morning. This is a great sign. We're just as excited as we can be to get people vaccinated, because we know that's how people can stay safe.
Well, again, hey, I am the founder of Geriatrics. You can check us out at geriatrics.org, GERIATRX.org. You can also follow us on social media. Please like and follow and subscribe. We are all over LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And of course, subscribe to my website. You get free 10 tips that I have and use for my patients on how to beat healthcare and fight back against a broken healthcare system.
Get vaccinated. Hey, get vaccinated. Hey, get your shot. Hey. I want folks to get vaccinated. That's the cure.
that prevents everything. Why we want to mess around with just temporary stuff? We don't need to encourage people to just go halfway with curing this disease. Let's get it done, and we know what it takes to get it done. Let's get a shot in your arm. And so I've done it. It's safe, it's effective, the data proves that it works. It doesn't cost you anything. It saves lives.
And welcome back to our final segment of the deal. It is Saturday, July 31st, 2021. Thanks for joining us. You just saw a whole bunch of people from Duke Health and Dr. DeLon Canterbury from the African American COVID Task Force. You saw Brian Dawson from K97.5, part of the Radio 1 family. Folks that Val and I work with, over in the Radio 1 world when we're on terrestrial radio, trying to encourage people to get out, get vaccinated. So please do that. And then you saw coming from the break is Governor Kay Ivey of Alabama. She said in no uncertain terms, Val, that you need to get vaccinated, and you keep listening to these people, you're killing people. Now, Joe Biden said something similar. Everybody went apoplectic or whatever. But Kay Ivey, a Republican, is telling other Republicans in Alabama, you need to get vaccinated because the Delta variant is real and you're killing your relatives. Talk to me about how Kay Ivey and also the governor of Ohio, who's always been on that same tip, getting people vaccinated. Will this help turn the tide in places like Alabama and Arkansas? I know Florida's having a hell of a time, and DeSantis, he can't go back now on what he's been saying. He outlawed mask mandates. So what can Texas and Florida learn from the governor of Alabama?
Well, I don't think they will learn a lot because these people who, at this point, Ed, who are anti-mask, anti-vaccination, the core reason that they are this way is so deeply rooted in their psyche and in their decision-making process that a singular person like a governor of Ohio or Alabama or Tennessee or wherever is not going to change them. They have decided that this vaccination thing is a hoax or it's bad for them. They don't want to wear a mask because it takes away from their individuality and their decision making, and they are a free people. And no one person, even Donald Trump himself, can't get up and make a speech and have these people to change their minds. And one of the reasons that some of these people you're hearing now, even Mitch McConnell has a PSA out talking about this issue about wearing masks and taking shots. The reason they're doing that is most of the people that are adamant about not participating in that are people who voted for Donald Trump, or people who are GOP supporters. And they are losing their own base. I mean, they need to have their own base to stop doing this. You can't have a base that half of them in the hospital and the other half in the graveyard, you know? So they need to do what they're doing to save their own political standing. But to answer your question directly, I don't believe that talks like the governor of Alabama gave is going to be very effective.
Yeah. You know, I've been reading story after story this week of people literally on their deathbed saying, I wish I had gotten the vaccine, or please get the vaccine, or can I get the vaccine? And being told, no, it's too late, you can't get it. There's no help. We got to treat you the way we're being treated. But I thought Donald Trump said that, hey, look at me. I made it through because there's these drugs, these magic drugs that you can take. Was he telling a lie? Was the cocktail of drugs that he got that were experimental not available to everybody? I mean, that's what he said. I mean, I remember him standing in, like Mussolini in front of the White House when he came back from Walter Reed saying that, every American was going to be able to get this magic cocktail and be like him and beat COVID.
Yeah. My head starts spinning, going round and round when I try to untangle what Donald Trump said and which part was a lie when he said it and compare that with what's really going on. I can't keep up because he tells too many damn lies.
Right. That's the bottom line. So the last part on this, the last part on this, Val, because he is a liar and a horrible liar, and it's caused a lot of people to die. People still have a will as well, though. They can make up a decision based on fact whether or not they want to take it. But one thing they can't do now is if you're a federal employee, you can't not take the vaccine. The White House announced that the policy is going to go into effect, and if you don't take it, you're going to have to continue to be tested, and on some schedule that it's probably going to be impossible for you to do. So it's a sort of negative incentive, right, to get you to get vaccinated. And then the city of New York and some other places are requiring the same thing for their employees. Should we have not had this a long time ago? What has been the hesitation of, especially somebody like Joe Biden on the federal level, who could have imposed it on the federal level? Why has there been a reluctance to put these mandates in place?
Well, as far as Joe Biden is concerned, these guys he's still trying not to make the little old widow lady in Iowa mad. He's still trying to get that one person in North Dakota who really hadn't made up their mind whether they're going to be a Republican or a Democrat. Biden and all of his strategists, they spend all of their time trying to get those people to stay on the Democratic or the blue side of the ledger. And sometimes they don't see the big picture for that. I think we should have done this a long time ago. And the reason I seem so, if I seem like I'm really downing or talking bad about Democrats, is because I watched the Nicole Wallace show the other day on MSNBC. And she had as her guests Michael Steele and the Reverend Al Sharpton. And she was asking them about certain strategies that the Democrats should be employing. Al went on first talking about the National Action Network and marching and Martin Luther King III and so forth and so on. Michael Steele came on after him and said that, I never thought that I'd be in a situation to say that Al Sharpton was being too milquetoast, that he was being too kind, he wasn't tough enough, So I am the one that's the radical one here, and everybody laughed. They thought it was a joke, but I took it to heart, and that's what's going on too much with Democrats and Democrat supporters. They are trying to out-nicey the other side to death. They are trying their best not to seem like the bad guy. They want to do everything with kid gloves. And if you take a look at most of the very important measures that we won and made over the years, starting with the end of slavery, just about everything, every battle we won, it was a tough fought battle. And nobody came over to our side because they thought we were such nice guys and they wanted to be on our side. Everything was tough. And we stood up and we looked them in the eye and says, no, I ain't going no further. And you can take my life, but I ain't going for it, okay? And we've lost some of that toughness somewhere. We want to be negotiators and compromisers and bipartisan and give them a break and meet them in the middle. And the other side have changed where the middle is. The middle is the right side of right middle. That's where the middle is to them. And that's where we're trying to meet them. And a lot of people like me are getting tired of it. They're getting really, really tired of it.
You know where I want to meet them, Val? In the back of an alley. I want to fight it out. You're right. Be tough for once. Yeah.
Fight and I think it's a knife fight and they got a machine gun. I'm tired of that.
Yeah.
Either both have machine guns or neither have anything. Okay.
Yeah. Well, you know what, Val? I hear somebody tell me that we got a few minutes left. So I'm gonna ask you this. In the coming week, what do you got going on and what do we need to know? Can you tell me something good? What's happening?
Well, I am going to take a vacation to celebrate my 38th wedding anniversary.
All right.
My wife's birthday, and they're on the same day, and I won't tell you how old she is because I'll have to find out if I did that. But her birthday, we got married on her birthday. It's our 38th wedding anniversary and her birthday. And we will be off having fun. I won't tell anybody where we're going. But in the meantime, when the show comes on again, Connection, it'll be run by Ed Clark and Irv Joyner. I don't know if you've heard of those two guys before.
I reckon. I think I know them.
But they'll be running the show coming up this week. And I'm looking forward to hearing it. Being on vacation and also listening to my colleagues and the fine job I know they're going to do.
Well, there you go. Well, Val, I really appreciate you hanging in there with me today. Like I said, my sciatica is much better. I can sit long enough to do this show, and then we'll be on, like you said, Connections with Irv Joyner next weekend. In the meantime, folks, go out and do some good for somebody today, and we will see you next week on The Deal and Connections. See you.
We're cold.